We're the book friends that think good.
What does this mean for our life, for our world? Yiggity yeet, my dude. I'm happy to speak. Always happy to think.
I don't know how to do that. I can look into that.
Makes you sound like a book friend that can think good.
It's Jack and it's Weston.
BFTTGs. Yeah.
Jack, I think good. Sometimes I good think, too.
Makes you sound pretty good.
We might want to make it more concise. We are going to attempt to grapple and answer 3 questions. Number 1, what did we learn? Number 2, what did we disagree with? And number 3, what are we going to do about it? I am ready to roll.
I'm in it. Weston, my book friend, tell me, what book is it that we're thinking good about today?
We're live.
What's up, my book friend?
What is up? Today we are talking about Chapter 14 in Atomic Habits, how to make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible.
Ooh. Bold. Spoiler. Not impossible. Just more difficult. Opens with the story of Victor Hugo giving away all his clothes so he could write The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which I thought was a fun story that I didn't fully understand.
I thought it was one of those, like we've seen in this book so far. He struggles to bring salient examples, or at least salient examples to working class people.
Yeah, I think, it's just like so impractical.
Yeah.
And so like this is an example from a bygone era, right? Like Victor Hugo had all summer to write a novel and his publishers are like, we're not going to give you a year. We're going to give you 6 months now because you are being sluggardly or something like that.
Nice word.
Yeah, I don't know. And so he's like...
Is that a real word?
I know. I don't know.
All right.
But, the whole thing of like, assistant, take away my clothes and bring me my shawl. I'll write in the cold. Like,
bro, you're
just, I don't know. Just doesn't make any sense.
Oh, yeah. Later on in the book, I have a slight qualm with some of his wording on some things, but we'll get to that.
Sure. But, yeah, the whole point is, the reason he brings up Victor Hugo is he talks about he was on this deadline that became even more difficult. He was kind of like slacking off. And so his publisher pushed him harder, and what he did is he gave away his clothes so that he was cold and had to write. Otherwise, he wouldn't get his clothes back, I guess. But the point of this chapter is to make things difficult, and what he calls this is a commitment device. In one of the footnotes in the book, he calls it the Ulysses Pact, which I think is maybe a helpful analogy, where it's like Ulysses, when he was traveling by the sirens in Homer's Odyssey, right? The idea is he wanted to hear the siren song, but the whole thing with the sirens is the sirens lure ships to their death because they're actually these dangerous creatures. They're not beautiful women, but they sound like and look like beautiful women at a distance, and so the men would like veer their ships into dangerous rocks and then crash, and the sirens would eat them. Well, Ulysses wanted to hear this, so what he did is he had his sailors strap him to the mast of the ship so he could hear the song but couldn't steer the boat. And he had them plug their ears with wax. So the whole idea is when you're in a good state of mind, choose to do things that will prevent you from going down the wrong path, which goes back to what we talked about last time. A body in motion stays in motion, right? Mm-hmm. A body in movement tends to act, using clearest terminology. So the whole thing is like, can you prevent a way from pulling out your phone and just scrolling for 20 minutes that turns into 2 hours? Can you just, head that off?
Have you ever thought about getting one of those lock boxes?
Lockbox. You mean for phones specifically?
Yeah, it's like a little box that has like a timer on it, and you put your phone into it, and it literally, you can set it to whatever time, and it won't open until that time. Yeah. I've seen some people try that, and I've been curious to like try it myself, but I'm also like pretty good with my phone. But I guess I was wondering if you've tried it and if it was successful at all. Have you seen that at all?
I haven't tried it. I haven't seen it. I'll have to
Oh,
check it out.
yeah, it's like a little. It looks like a little. I don't know, one of those boxes that you put like cereal in, I guess. Those like
Oh, okay.
that kind of
Oh,
container.
yeah, one of those like clear
Yeah, it's like
containers.
a
Yeah.
giant clear Tupperware, and it has like a little lock on the top that you can't open. I mean, obviously, if you needed to, I guess you could break it, but like, yeah, it's got a little
Yeah.
automatic timer or something, and I guess people do that, or some people do, to help themselves
Yeah.
stay away and kind of do those gosh, what are they called? The dopamine reset? Take away their screen time, and like if they feel themselves getting addicted to that scroll that we've talked about a few times.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
simple example too that I thought about with the commitment device, which this is my first note too, is when you go to the grocery store, don't go hungry, right? Don't go
Right,
hungry to the
yeah,
grocery
yeah.
store. You'll buy a lot less crap. You'll buy healthy stuff, and then once you get home, at least for me, it's like that ease of access, right? I'm like, ugh. Like, well, I got the healthy food here, so I gotta eat that. Like, I'm not gonna go out of my way to eat unhealthy garbage if it's not right there. Like, it becomes
Right.
the healthy choices become the convenient choices, which then
Yeah.
leads to the good choices.
Yeah. Well, so here was my, and maybe I'll just leave with a question. You know, initially I started reading about this. I read the rest of the chapter, obviously, and I find like he gives good examples of commitment devices, stuff like that. One of my questions was, how do you, there seems to be a happy medium with the commitment device where it needs to be inconvenient enough that you don't do the thing, make your bad habit impossible. But I think you could go way too far with this to the point that like you're overemphasizing your bad habits rather than working on good habits.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that.
Good example is something like the phone thing. That almost seems like too extreme a commitment device where you could do something a little bit less. And here's the reason. Your phone is still your landline to the outside world, right? Like,
Right.
you know, that cuts you off from communication with everybody.
To be
so you
fair,
say like,
to be
I'm gonna
fair,
put my phone in the jar.
because
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think that's
Yeah.
a danger, right? To be fair, when I've seen it used more often with people that have two phones, where they have like a work phone and, and a home phone, and they'll be
Sure,
like,
yeah, if
"Look,
you're like
I'm trying to just stay on the clock when I'm on the clock," and they'll put the work
Sure.
phone in that thing until the next morning, so
Okay.
that like,
Yeah.
their boss can't reach them or they can't answer any emails, and it's like a complete separation. I think it's been, at least the way I've seen it used, is more of to create that separation of work and home life for people
Yes.
that work from home, which I think
Totally.
I think is beneficial, because I totally agree. You can totally go
Yeah.
too far. Like, if I were to do that, well, I only have one phone, and
Yeah.
like, yeah, if something happened, with my son at daycare or something like that, like, yeah, that would be terrible. So I can't do that. I can't afford to do that.
Yeah, the other example is, like he talks a lot about putting things in the other room or putting them in the closet. I think that's a much better solution than throwing things away. Because like a good example is like video games, right? Where it's like unplug it, put it in the closet. Unplug your Switch, unplug your Xbox, put it in the closet. Because then you have to be really motivated to do it.
Yeah.
And like really say like, okay, am I going to get this out, plug it in, and play it, or I'm just going to pick it up and play for 5 minutes, which turns into 30 minutes, which turns into 2 hours.
I mean, what game can you only play for 5 minutes,
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Nothing. I mean, that was the whole pull of League of Legends, and then look what it did to people's lives.
Dude, right? Because then it becomes that short term. Any game that's short term becomes like, oh, well, I can just do another one real quick. I can just do another one real quick.
Again.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
How many times over the past like 2 years? 2 years ago, I started playing Rocket League. How many times over the past 2 years? I have a couple of buddies that play, and when we play like on the weekend nights or something, we'll be like, all right, we just got to get one more win, guys. Just one more win, and it ends up turning into like 8 games because we just suck.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
keep
One
losing.
more game becomes one more win, becomes one more hat trick, becomes, you're like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. We need to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Or
that's
it's like when you're
totally,
playing basketball, at least for me, right? I gotta end on like a 3-point make. And man, there have been times where we've been at the park and my wife has been like, Weston, we need to go. I'm like, hon, I just need to hit one. Clank. Clank. Like,
I do that all the time with my wife where she's like, all right, bedtime. And I'll have like just started like working on something. I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'll be right
yeah.
there. Like 20 minutes later, she's like, hello. Like, oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Flow state, dude. The downside of the flow
Yeah,
state. Having a partner.
it is.
What do? Put him in a lockbox.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, like I think a big mistake with video games would be something like sell your console. Now, if you're
Oh,
like
yeah.
addicted or if it's seriously like detrimental to your life, like maybe that's where you need to go. But like the reality is most people can handle having a video game console and not ruining their life. You know, you just, it's more a matter of like figuring out how to train yourself because I think one of the things is like you take those extreme measures and then you apply those extreme measures to everything. Like, I think it's that kind of mindset that leads you to do things like say anything difficult, I'm just going to cut it out, right? Like, can lead to like relationship issues or avoidance,
Or
things like that.
I can offer an alternative to that, which is something that I did a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I took the opposite route of that, where I was like looking around at the culture, and I was like, I don't want to do anything the easy way. I'm going to do everything the hard way. Like, I guess I got really into this with like my meal prep and my workout routine and all this stuff. And I got just like way too intense about it. And I didn't want to cut any corners. I was like, no, I'm not going to cut any corners. I'm not going to make anything easier for myself. And like, that can lead to some really, really bad things too. Like I found myself, I think the moment that I realized I had gone too far was like I was arguing with my wife about how I needed to shave some ginger that I was pickling myself. And I was like, I reflected on myself. I was like, what am I doing? Why did we get into a huge fight about me pickling ginger? Like, right? So I feel like you can...
It wasn't done fermenting.
Yeah.
You can't move that out of the sun. It needs to be there.
Right? Or she had moved something maybe like into a different cabinet. And I was like, hon, for me to be completely efficient in the mornings, I need it right here. I didn't know where it was, and then I had to spend 10 extra seconds looking for it. Come on! Like, dude, whoa. So I had to like chill myself on some of that stuff for sure.
Yeah.
That's the other side of the go.
Yeah, totally. That is, and I do, like, I know some people like this. I have a friend who is like a big, what's that term? Oh, biohacker, right? The kind who's like constantly trying to like do efficient things to his body and stuff. And he was telling me about like taking ice baths in the morning. Like he would like bathe in ice for 15 minutes and then
How do you
like
do that every day? Is he just buying bags of ice?
Well, yeah, I mean, see, this is the thing. It's like, that is so, like, it's a great way to start the morning. It's like, okay, but it takes you 15 minutes to draw a bath, fill it with ice, and then get back out and warm up to like, so your like 10-minute ritual takes a whole hour,
Right.
like at the beginning of the day. It's just, and he like, admittedly, he's like a very like good-natured, humorous sort of person. He was like, yeah, that was kind of dumb.
Oh yeah, right. That's
But,
I
like,
mean, hopefully
those-
that's the point we all get to with these things because we all are dumb. We all do stupid stuff, and yeah. This actually brought me to, I don't know if this might be jumping ahead, but on 174, when I was very, very glad that he addressed the downsides of automation. The quote that I picked out that I really agreed with, that I reacted like, yes, was the downside of automation is that we can find ourselves jumping from easy task to easy task without making time for more difficult but ultimately more rewarding work. Mm-hmm. And that's something that stood out to me as like, yes, like that's the downside of automation and making everything easy.
Yes.
Because then we'll just avoid difficult things and challenging things, and basically we'll avoid the process of learning.
Yes.
At all cost.
Yeah. I mean, that's like we talked about last week with the like need for reflection, like just no reflection, just acting on a whim, because that's funny. I highlighted this sentence literally above that. When the effort required to act on your desires becomes effectively zero, you can find yourself slipping into whatever impulse arises at the moment. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think like addiction is part of living. All people have addictions, I think, or can develop addictions easily. Oh, yeah. Like that's something that Clear points out early in this book. But we have made ourselves we made it so easy to get whatever you want, whenever you want it, that we are feeding addictions to all kinds of things societally. You know, social media, anxiety. You know, we talked about a little bit a while ago about the effect of porn and like sexual dysfunction, like all of that stuff. It's so easy to feed those negative things.
Well, it's like you said about last chapter. I think that's a big reason or a big part of the rise of anxiety in our culture. Like there's people being anxious about everything because everything's so easy to do that when you come across something that's a little bit challenging, it's like, oh, what? Oh.
Yeah. How can I face a challenge? I've never faced a challenge. I don't do that.
Yeah, man. That's one of the things that I have seen definitely decline in my students, just like overall, generally, is their ability and desire to even approach a challenge. Like it used to be, even, you know, I've only been in this for about a decade. At the start of my career, if I said something to the kids like, bet you can't, like, they would be like, dude, whatever. Like, okay, let's do this, right? And, like, now if I say anything like that, where I'm like, well, I'll challenge you to do this. They're like, well, I don't want to do a challenge, dude. And they'll just avoid it, and they just won't even try. And I'm just like, what? Like, they don't like challenging themselves at all. So that's a big thing that I have to work on, and I've been working on a lot. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around how I can... I mean, I don't think I ever will be able to overcome the environment around them outside of my classroom, you know? But that's something that... It's something that's important that we need to get away from. We need to introduce more challenges and, like, yeah, I guess, you know, young parents, make sure your kids... That's a huge thing for success. Is the ability to overcome challenges, and I think that's something that I've been trying to focus on more and more because, you know, it doesn't matter that they can. I don't care so much that my students know how to fluently perform a calculation. I care more. I guess I'm approaching it just from a math example. I care more about them being able to figure out what is actually important in a situation. Sure. And contextual thinking, critical thinking is huge. Like that's what we need more of. We don't need more automaticity out of our kids. They have and it's going to get more automatic. Things are going to get more automatic, you know? Yeah. Like some of our kids, it's funny. I still hear kids from time to time say, you know, well, I want to learn, like, you know, how do you do taxes? How do you do all the adult stuff? And I'm like, bro, all that shit is easy. Like, doing taxes nowadays is not that daunting of a task. It's really not. There's so much automaticity built into it, unless you're doing like crazy complicated work or have like 3 or 4 jobs. Then you know, it can get a little complicated. But it's like, dude, if you're working 1-2 jobs and they're pretty straightforward, like doing taxes is not that daunting of a task. Or paying bills. Paying bills, dude. Once you set up the automatics, it's like I don't even have to think about that, right? So kids stress about that stuff, and it's like, dude, that's not the stuff you should even be stressing about. I think you should be stressing about is how are you gonna contextualize your environment? How are you gonna manage to figure out the world and become the kind of person you want to be? So
I think the ironic thing is in the pursuit of less challenge, people create more challenge for themselves. Where it's like, I just want to be a YouTuber. It's like, have fun doing your taxes when you do that for a living. The same with like, true, I'm gonna be a day trader. It's like, definitely have fun with your taxes. That's gonna be a nightmare. So like, you can never, the idea of like skipping the challenge is totally false. You will not skip challenges. Like, I see this hovering around the internet every once in a while, and though I disagree with how it's often used, because people often use it in a response or like a clap back to people, where it's like, choose your hard. Like, you know, like staying married is hard, being divorced is hard, like choose your hard. Like, you know, being working out every day is hard, and like having health problems is hard, like choose your hard. Like, I see that kind of thing, and I think it's insensitive, like the way it's presented. But I do agree with it, where it's like, that's right, like no matter what you choose, it will be hard. Like, there will be difficulties to overcome, and like we need to prepare our minds and like activate our habits, our bodies, like our souls to deal with those difficult things.
I think so.
Because there's no escaping.
Is that related to, or I guess maybe the only place I've seen that idea is, I saw some Jordan Peterson clip where he talks about that, where it's like, he's talking about growing up and how kids have all this potential and they're nothing but potential. And that's what's so like exciting about children and youth. But then you eventually learn that like you have to choose a path, and you have to choose basically, I guess, your hard, like you're saying. Is that kind of really, like, you have to choose what you're going to deal with. You have to choose your evil. It's kind of, I'm not sure. I remember from that.
I'm not sure. I just see it. I've seen it posted by like friends. I've seen it on Twitter. I've seen it on Instagram. I've seen it on Facebook. And of course, like all of that's subjective. So, you know, just people in my network are sharing that stuff.
I'll try and find that Jordan Peterson clip and link it in the description. And you guys tell us if I was on the right path, and if you find that any posts like that, we'll see if they're on the same thing or if I'm totally off base. Disagreements, pushbacks. Did you have any?
I think my primary pushback was right up top, just with and I think we've already talked about it a little bit, like taking things too far, or like finding examples that are not practical. Like the Victor Hugo one is just like, I'm gonna give away all my clothes so I can write a book, and it's like, what? I don't really even understand how that worked for him, but I'm glad it did. You know. What about you?
Page 175. Page 175. This is a tiny pushback, but it's another thing I had a visceral reaction to. Here's the quote. Okay, so this section he's talking about how he struggled with his social media, and he has an assistant change all of his passwords for him on a weekly basis and give him new passwords every Monday. And he had the audacity to write, if you don't have an assistant, do it with a friend or something. It's like, I reacted, oh my God, you entitled brat. What? Who the F has assistants? Or at least what populate, like, it's just another one where it's like, dude, you're totally missing the vast majority of people here. You're talking to the 1% of the 1% in this book sometimes. And I said, I guess I had another just insane reaction to it, because I was like, what a waste of an assistant. You're going to waste your assistant. You have an assistant, and you're going to waste another human being's life doing that mundane thing for you every week? Like, I said, my God, this guy comes off as an insufferable, entitled as fuck prick sometimes. Holy hell. That was my reaction to that and my pushback.
Yeah.
I got really mad at it. When people use other people in stupid ways like that, I get really mad. So that was my reaction.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think like, man, this is one of those things where I think this is another like negative automation thing that I sometimes see people employ, where it's like, oh, I don't have time for admin tasks. I'm going to try to find an assistant to do that, or I'm going to hire somebody to do this or whatever. It's like, do your admin tasks. Like seriously, like sit down for an hour and respond to emails. And then guess what? You have no more emails. Like it's really not as time consuming or as problematic as people make it out to be sometimes. Yeah. And I think it's like that kind of mentality that prevents us from moving forward. And here's what the real thing is. When you tell yourself like, oh, I'm so busy, I don't have time to respond to all my text messages. I don't have time to, check my Facebook notifications. I don't have time to respond to emails. What you're really communicating is like, I'm above this, and thus like above other people who are doing this thing. Mm-hmm. And the reality is like, just check your emails.
Yeah.
You can answer your own emails. Like respond to your text messages.
My thought
what are you doing?
If I ever got to that point where I felt like I needed an assistant to do that sort of stuff for me, because I feel like that is such a deeply personal thing, him managing his social media time. Like, check yourself, dude.
Yeah.
Like, change something in your life where if you can't even handle that, if you can't do that, then you need to change your schedule, not pass the buck onto someone else, And I think this spoke to an issue that people have with taking responsibility for their own actions, or taking responsibility for their own life. We talked about it earlier in the book where it's like, I think people need to be more in tune with themselves. Yeah, and I think his example here shows that if he still is doing this or whatever, he needs to be more in tune with himself.
That's right.
Because no one, So, I agree with what you said.
That's right. Yeah, taking responsibility for your actions is difficult, and it masquerades as other things. Mm-hmm. Where you just think like, oh, yeah, I'll just have this person do this thing for me or whatever. Like
the hubris, though. God, I can't even imagine that, dude.
Here's a place I see it come up occasionally is in division of labor in the household. And you tell yourself like, oh, I do X and my wife does X or whatever, or Y, and then it's like, like why are the dishes not done, or why are, these things, like there is a simple solution sometimes to those annoyances, and it's to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, oh, so you have a complaint? Why don't you just do it and not complain about it?
Yes. Yep. That is something that my wife and I definitely had discussions on in the past, for sure. And it went both ways. There were certain things that like I didn't want to do, or like I just wouldn't think about. And there's certain things that she didn't want to do and didn't want to think about or wouldn't think about, And I think we've come to an understanding. And again, we're only 4 years in, so it's definitely still a work in progress. We're not a perfect couple by any means. But I think our understanding at this point is a division of labor is important. And it's important to maintain the household, especially once you have kids. But both people need to be capable of doing everything, at least as much as possible, right? So like a simple example is the dishes. Well, it's like, well, okay, both of us need to know where the soap is, where the sponge is, how, where all the dishes go in the kitchen, so that we can both do it when we need to. Yes, that one's actually pretty even, but like, laundry. I most of the time do the laundry, but there's definitely times where my wife does it because I'm out of the house or I'm doing some yard work or something, then she'll change the load. So she needs to know how to do it too. Cooking dinner, right? Or doing the bills like that. Funny enough, in our household, my wife typically handles the automatic bills, but I still know all the passwords. I still know how to do them. I think that's important. It's like both partners you need to empower each other to be capable, and I think that helps avoid a lot of conflict. But that takes time. That takes time to talk about those things, understand each other's weak points and blind spots, and yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we don't realize is how much this stuff eats at us too. Like a perfectly good example that comes up in all relationships, friendship or whatever, is like, why won't they talk to me about this thing? Like, the answer to that is, it's bothering you. You need to bring it up.
Yep.
Right? Like that's a perfect example of a very simple thing that's like this, where it's like, and we're straying a little bit from Clear's point in this chapter, but I think there is that element of like, we don't understand our bad habits because we have become so accustomed to not dealing with them, like not doing anything about them. And what we don't realize is they're eating us alive. They're just like, that creates like you have a negative encounter with somebody, rather than address it, you stew on it. And then slowly you start to build contempt for a person that you have a very minor quarrel with. And I think this is why we see things like families disintegrating like at a rapid pace in America and stuff like that, is because we just don't have the tools or the practice in dealing with our difficult things. So I think one of the values of this work that Clear is writing up, and he does make this point a little bit, how like one of the benefits of doing this is it's an identity decision where you're like, okay, I'm with the whole like, I think he actually brings it up in the 2-minute rule in the last chapter, but it's worth talking about here, which is like, you're making that vote for your identity of like, who am I? Am I a person who deals with hard things, or am I a person who always takes the easy way? And the only way to get to being that kind of person of like, I can face challenges, is to take on challenges and face them.
Yeah. And, well, I guess to bring it back to this whole law, right? Because this chapter wraps up the third law in the book, which is make it easy. So you need to approach the challenges in your life by making, I think the crux of this, of make it easy, is to make the difficult things easier to approach and easier to manage. And that's takes thought, takes time, takes reflection, takes action.
Yeah, it definitely does. I have a really good example of this actually that worked out recently. I had a friend call me, and he was dealing with an issue with another friend and just wanted some advice. Said, hey, how should I deal with this? And he had this big problem, monumental problem, right? That had been going on for a while, but he wanted to talk to his friend about it. And he was like walking me through like the script and stuff. And I was like, dude, just let's break this down a little bit and start with like, call this person and say, hey, I want to talk to you. And just like lead into that conversation simply. Don't start out with the script. Don't start out with the problem. Like start out with like, when's the last time you talked to this person? Oh, it's been a long time. Like start there. Just say like, hey, I thought we needed to talk. And he did this. He was like, okay, yeah, no, that's a good point. So he set aside the script, all of this complicated stuff, and called up his friend. I told him, hey, let me know how it goes. And later he said, man, that worked out really well. Like as soon as he said like, hey man, I want to talk to you, the person went, oh, I'm so glad you called. I've been wanting to talk to you too. It opened the door to this conversation that's like, oh, interesting. Like this didn't need to be a big anxiety thing. It was actually a great opportunity, and that it needed to start with a simple step, not a complicated thing, or not a complete solution even. I think that's sometimes how we look at things, especially bad things, is like, I need to have the solution fully worked out, you know? Like going back to education, talking about math problems. Kid looks at a word problem and they're like, I'll never solve this. And what you do is you break it down. You go, okay, well, do you know what the pieces of the problem are that you need to solve?
Cubes, bro. Cubes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just confusing. It's an acronym we use.
Oh. I was like, yeah, manipulatives are good.
Yeah, cubes. No. It's a process. Sorry.
Gotcha.
Didn't mean to get you off.
But that's exactly the point. Process, simplicity. The same thing, I think you could apply the 2-minute rule to commitment devices as well, or to like breaking bad habits, where it's like, okay, breaking this bad habit is going to be extremely hard. Something like smoking. It's like, man, that's a habit that you've been doing for a long time and you're super addicted. Don't just quit. Like, break that down. Like, how can you make this really, really easy?
Yeah. Doing anything cold turkey, going from 0 to 60 or 60 to 0 is insanely difficult. Difficult. For those of you curious about what CUBES stands for, stands for circle the important numbers, underline the question, box the action words or the operation words, and then write the expression and draw. E stands for expression and draw, and then S stands for solve and check. So if I have any educators out there that want to steal that, feel free. It's worked really well with my kids for breaking down word problems. Cubes.
Yeah. I think applying a rubric like that for our lives is like break it down, right? Like bad habits, like break them down. Start with BB.
I'm wondering if I could come up with an analogy real quick. So if C is circle the important numbers, right? Break down the important things that you want to do. I guess circle those. Underline the question you're trying to answer for yourself. How do I become a
problem
better
your
husband?
brain? The problem your brain is trying to solve.
Right.
Like bored,
box the
hungry.
action words. Make it actionable. What are the small actions you can take? And then expressions and draw could be
apply Clear's methods like the tiny habits stuff.
Yep.
The habit stacking.
Yep.
The chart.
Write those expressions. They're literally, he writes them as expressions. Perfect. There we go. And then solve and check. Reflect on it and move forward. Go back on that pendulum we talked about. Motion to action. Boom. We did it, dude.
Yeah,
we solved world peace. We did it, dude.
Thank you for joining us, book friends. Next week on the BFTTG pod, Jack and Weston, they're thinking good. Some more with you, our book friends. Check out the show notes or the description, comment section for a link to the book and any articles that we talk about in the show. Bye-bye, book friends.
Bye for this time, guys. Do a good thing today.
I love you.
Love you too, dude.